You are the person who convinced Donald Trump to run for office. What did you see in him before the rest of the country did?
I first met him in 1979 when I was sent to New York to run Ronald Reagan's campaign for president. And he was referred to me as someone who might be interested in joining Reagan's finance committee. And of course, I knew from the tabloids, I knew who he was, and he was very well known. And he's worked a lifetime to build his brand. I pitched him. He joined Reagan's finance committee, he and his father. They both raised $100,000, which in 1979 is a lot of money. And also the individual giving limit was much lower. After Reagan was elected, I did not join the administration. I opened a public affairs firm, Black Manafort and Stone, which was quite successful. The left says that we were the torturers' lobby. No, we represented foreign countries that were allies of the United States. One of my very first clients was Donald Trump and the Trump Organization. By 1988, I recognized that he had the stature, I don't mean the physical stature, although he is tall and charismatic, and he can command a room, but also the independence, the courage, the stamina, the open mind to be not just a great presidential candidate, but also be a great president. And there was a specific day in 1988, we were sitting in his office, he was reading the New York Times, and he said, wow, Michael Dukakis and George H.W. Bush, that's what it's going to come down to? Those guys are both terrible. Terrible. There's got to be somebody better. I said, oh, there definitely is. He said, who's that? Let's get behind him. I said, well, I was thinking of you. He said, you're out of your mind. I said, why? You feel very strongly about the trade agreements that we're making. This was pre-NAFTA and pre-GATT. We feel very strongly that we're getting ripped off in our trade negotiations. You feel very strongly that we've let our military capability atrophy. You're not happy that there's no respect for our military. You think Jimmy Carter's a weakling, which he was. You think it's time for our NATO allies to pay their fair share. He was saying this back in the 80s. Why wouldn't you run? And he said, well, maybe someday, maybe someday. And I said, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we take a trip to New Hampshire? I'll arrange for a speech invitation and we'll see how it goes. And of course we went and he spoke to the Portsmouth, New Hampshire Chamber of Commerce. The media immediately said, oh, Trump must be running for president, he must be weighing a presidential bid. So it got enormous coverage, but it was also the first time that I'd ever seen Trump's appeal, Trump's sizzle, as it were, in a political context. And it was electric. I mean, the turnout for his speech, Vice President George Bush had spoken to the same Rotary Club, I think it was, a month before, and he'd had the biggest crowd they ever had, 300 people. 1,500 people showed up just to watch Trump's helicopter land. There were 1,000 people roughly at his speech. They had to put speakers outside the restaurant because it wasn't large enough to fill the room. So I saw the potential that early. He did seriously consider running in 2000, but he would tell you today that was more my idea than his. He was very good friends with the Texas billionaire Ross Perot, who had run for president twice as an independent and done pretty well. And Perot kept telling him, Donald, both parties are broken. It takes a businessman to get in there and fix it. You could be that man. I tried. I gave it my best. You could fix it. You should run. And Jesse Ventura, who had been a professional wrestler, who got elected governor of Minnesota as an independent, before he went off the deep end, which sadly is where he is today, basically told Trump the same thing. The two parties are broken. They can't fix it. It takes an independent-minded business person to fix it. So we weighed it. We looked at it. He spent some substantial money studying how to get on the ballot, because the Reform Party was on the ballot in about a third of the states, maybe more. But he finally concluded correctly that you needed to either be a Republican or a Democrat, that you could not win as an independent. He also recognized that if he ran, there was a high potential that he would just drain votes from the Republican nominee and inadvertently elect Al Gore president, which would have been a disaster. So ultimately, he did not run. Then, as you know, he looked at it again briefly in 2012. But in all truth, I think it attracted his interest too late in the cycle. And Mitt Romney, who was an inherently weak candidate, pretty much had the nomination wrapped up by the time Trump was interested. So he didn't run in 2012. He would have been a stronger candidate against Obama than Romney proved to be. And then in 2016, it was like the perfect time. The time and the man were ideal, and the rest is history.
You know Donald Trump personally, and you have a lot of experience working as a lobbyist in Washington back in the days. What piece of advice you will give to an ally, like in Greece, on how to navigate Trump's Washington in order to make its voice heard?
Well, the current Greek government seemed to be completely copacetic with Joe Biden and Biden's policies. First of all, I think that people need to understand Trump's agenda. And to the extent that our allies, and Greece is certainly an ally, recognizes that the greatest single threat, for example, to the United States and to the world is communist China. I think it's very important that I think, for example, that the Greeks' maritime claims should be supported by the United States. I think that Turkey has to be addressed very carefully because they are playing it's my opinion, again, they're frenemies. The president has appointed an extraordinarily able ambassador to the United States, Tom Barrack, who is a good friend of mine all the way back to 1972. But he's also appointed a very strong and influential ambassador to Greece. So you have in Kymberley Guilfoyle someone who could pick up the phone and call the President of the United States. She is going to be very, very effective in that position. She's going to be able to communicate to the President the thoughts, the needs, the dynamics of the country's relationship with Greece. So instead of sending some veteran bureaucrat, foreign service, careerist, he has sent somebody who has his ear. I think that's very, very significant.
So do you think Kymberley Γκίλφοϊλ will be a traditional diplomat, or she will have an opportunity to redefine the role?
I think she will entirely redefine the role. First of all, I think people need to recognize that she was an extraordinarily successful prosecutor in her own career. She actually, serving as a state prosecutor in California, both in San Francisco and Los Angeles, she actually never lost a case. And she was very famous for giving her summations in court completely from memory, without notes. She's an enormously capable individual, and she has the trust and a close relationship with the president. I think it is a sign of the president's high regard for Greece, that he has sent one of his closest friends as an ambassador and supporters, as opposed to some careerist bureaucrat.
President Trump has a notably close relationship with President Erdogan. Have you ever heard him talking about Erdogan, and what do you think draws him to that relationship?
I've never discussed the matter with him, but here's a story that I can tell you, and that is, the president told me that shortly after he won the 2016 election, he met privately with Bill Clinton, the former president, and then he met quite publicly with President Barack Obama. And they both told him the same thing, which was, look, your biggest single problem in the world is this madman in North Korea. He's, we think he either is very close to having a nuclear device or he may already have them. And he is brutal to his own people. And we think he's very dangerous. And Trump said, well, what is he saying? And they said, what do you mean? And he said, well, when you talk to him, what does he say? Oh, we're not talking to him. And Trump said, well, how much sense does that make? Wouldn't want to have a dialogue with him to see what's on his mind, to try to see where he's headed, see if maybe you could talk him out of doing things that would be damaging to the United States. They said, no, the best way to handle him is to just freeze him out. So that's not Trump's attitude. And of course, his opening to North Korea was one of the most historic things he did. It was a move towards peace. And I would point out the North Koreans, at least temporarily, put their nuclear weapons development program on hold because they had a dialogue with the President of the United States. So I would view Erdogan in the same way. He is going to talk to him. He's going to talk to everybody because he wants to get everybody's input. And he believes that you should pursue commerce over chaos. You should pursue negotiation over war. That's why he was elected.
And do you think that closeness with Erdogan can affect the way United States will respond to Greece's security concerns? Will Erdogan feel more emboldened, or will the United States continue to pressure for stability in the Eastern Mediterranean?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer the question, other than to say my expectation is that the United States will be very even-handed in its relationships with both Turkey and Greece. The fact that you have two of the president's closest friends and allies in those two countries as ambassadors, I think is pivotal, because not only can Kímberlí Guilfoyle get the president on the phone, she can also get the ambassador to Turkey on the phone, and vice versa. They're both enormously able. They're both very fair-minded. Tom Barrack has a particular burden because he's not only the ambassador to Turkey, but he's also the special envoy to Syria. But I would not presume that just because Donald Trump is talking to somebody that it will show some bias. I don't expect that.
And getting back to Greece, are there any specific steps that you would like to see the Trump administration taking for advancing even further the relationship between Washington and Athens?
Well, I think we should bolster the Alexandroupolis port. I think we should support Greece's maritime claims. Greece has offered us military base opportunities. Again, I speak only for myself, but I think you will find that we will have a balanced relationship with Greece, particularly with Kímberlí Guilfoyle there as an advocate.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.